Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome to another edition of the SoulJourn. My name is Heshima Moja. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. So here we go on a journey. Sound is our guide into the most important place that we can possibly delve. That's inside of ourselves as we deal with issues that affect all of us as a human family. And so today we're going to be talking about the importance of setting boundaries. What does it mean to set boundaries? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And how do we do it? Many of us have been conditioned to believe that setting boundaries is somewhat selfish. And so we tend to spend quite a bit of time allowing people to come into our personal space, meaning our heart space, our mental space, and to drain us because we just don't know how to express to somebody in a healthy way the importance of respecting boundaries. And so today we're going to examine the language of boundaries. How do we do that? I have a really special guest, which will be coming on a little bit later, a very good friend and colleague, Ms. Jasmine Clemente from Brooklyn, New York. And she'll be on with us just a little bit later. I want to talk to you all just for a minute. I'd like to introduce an important quote, and it's kind of going to be the focal point of what we're discussing today. So there's a quote by Mr. Henry Cloud, and the quote says, "Boundaries define us. They define what is me and what is not me. A boundary shows me where I end and someone else begins, leading me to a sense of ownership. So knowing what I own and what I am to take responsibility for brings me freedom." And we're going to talk about this quote just a little bit, but it's very important because in the particular moment that we're living in human history, which happens to be our reality in this moment, where we're still dealing with issues of social distancing, quarantine, some to greater extremes than other or greater extent than other, depending on where you might live in the country. Here in New York City, in the New York City area and on the East Coast in general, we tend to be still under a pretty strict sense of quarantine and still observing some stay-at-home orders. But these times that we live in and these circumstances that we're dealing with can also tend to shine a light on some other issues in our society that relate to how human beings interact. And what I'm talking about is the fact that we have many issues in our society that define who can go where, how they might be able to travel, the extent to which one might feel free to travel and move about in society. Issues like patriarchy, where women's rights are not given the same equitable level as men's. So patriarchy is, for those who don't know, when men control the society and the ways that society operates. Certainly structural and institutional racism and class, economic issues can certainly be or play a huge role in how free one feels to move about on a regular basis. And for people who haven't historically had to live with those issues, the idea of someone for the first time ever telling them that they can't go somewhere, that they have to behave in a particular way if they are in fact in public, meaning that they have to wear a mask if they go into a business, or gloves. They have to stand a certain distance away from people. Those types of things can make people who are not used to those types of boundaries feel very agitated, very frustrated, right? And so I think it's important that we talk today about some of those things, but also that we just talk about the issues of effective boundary setting, even for those who are within your own space. Some of you live alone, others live with family, or maybe with a live-in partner, a husband, a wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, some type of live-in partner, a roommate. And so when you're all of a sudden thrust into a situation where your space is now limited, because now 24 hours a day you are physically in the presence of other people. For some people who are introverted, that can be a big strain on one's energy, mental and physical and emotional energy, because everybody is different. We have extroverts, we have introverts, we have people who are kind of 50-50. I'm a 50-50 person. I can be very social, but when I reach my limit, I can't go any further. And then I need to isolate because I need to recharge my battery, if you will. And for people who are not accustomed to those types of living situations, it can be very, very straining and very draining. And for some people, this brings about issues of depression, anxiety, and we're going to be talking about all of those things as we deal with our topic of setting boundaries in the time of quarantine. So, what I would like to do, if I can indulge you all, is I would like to play another piece as we kind of move into a meditative space. And this is not on my format, but I'm just kind of feeling that I should do that. So today, I'm just going to begin to play a little meditative music as we start to relax. As I always extend the invitation for those who are watching live, please feel free to add your comments into the comment sections on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram. And if you put those questions in, I will go back and answer those questions later. So you can put those in at 2622 on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, where we're streaming live. But for now, let's just take a deep breath with me, breathing in deeply and releasing that breath. taking another nice deep breath in. And allowing the breath to release. And as you exhale, allow all the stress that you might feel mentally or physically to leave. Imagine yourself blowing it out. Why don't you take one more nice deep in-breath with me? And as a mentor of mine, Kenny Werner, would encourage you to breathe in as if you're taking in your favorite piece of pie. Nice and deep and full. Indulging in the breath. And releasing. Now, imagine yourself sitting up straight and imagine a string at the top of your head, pulling your spine completely straight wherever you're sitting, whether you're sitting on the floor, whether you're laying on the floor, whether you're sitting in your favorite chair. Sit up straight and imagine all of the vertebrae opening up. Right there in your home where you are, maybe you want to do a nice forward bend. Maybe you want to stand up right where you are. And at the hips, if you practice yoga, just at the hip, do a nice forward bend and allow the spine just to open up. In these times, a lot of us are doing a lot more sitting than normal. And so that can compact the spine. And if we compact the spine, then the spinal fluid can't flow up and down, and we start to feel sluggish because we're not getting those messages to the brain as they travel, as the electrical messages travel through the spinal fluid. Breathing in. And as you breathe out, release all the tension in your head. Breathing in. And as you breathe out, release all the tension from your face. You can even let your jaw just hang out. Nobody can see you. You're all by yourself. I can't see you through the camera. You can see me, so. And just releasing all the tension from the face. Breathing in and breathing out and releasing all the tension from the neck. You can even just allow your neck to move, allowing your head to hang from one side to the next. Breathing out. If you've been watching the show for the past few weeks, then you know that I always talk about the importance of breath. There's a beautiful book that I always recommend to people called The Science of Breath. And it talks about how many of us breathe in a very shallow way because we're hustling and bustling. If you live in places like New York City, then you're moving quickly all the time. And sometimes your breath is very short and some stale air stays in the lungs. And if the lungs are polluted, the rest of the immune system will be weakened. So breathing in. And as you breathe out, I'd invite you use a nice forceful exhale from the stomach and release all the tension in your chest and in your shoulders. Breathe in and breathe out. And release all the tension in your stomach, in your rib cage, in your lower back. And you can practice this type of breathing and this type of relaxation or meditation, if you will, in order to keep the body relaxed. And if the body is relaxed, the circulation will operate more efficiently. And if the circulation is happening, then physical waste inside the body will be able to excise. And also your body can continue to produce fresh, healthy red blood cells, and you can oxygenate the body so your mind will remain clear. Maybe some of us in this time are feeling a little sluggish. Maybe the days seem to run together. Breathing and releasing all tension. What we resist persists. So if you continue to resist where we are, what we're going through, and try to act like it's not happening, we give our energy to it. We become tense, and we become anxious, and we become frustrated. Allowing yourself. Let's just do 3 more in and out breaths. Nice, deep in breath. How does that feel? You feel a little more relaxed? I hope so. So, what I'd like to do is I would like to invite, at this time, I want to give a little extra time because my guest this week is so dynamic. A powerful motivational speaker, a businesswoman, owner of HomeToMySoul.com, which is not only a candle company and home decor business, but it's also a self-help or lifestyle business that really promotes wellness and how to create in your home your most important physical space, feelings of wellness. She's also an artist. She's a good friend, one of my favorite people on the planet, actually. So I'd like to welcome to the SoulJourn my good friend, Ms. Jasmine Clemente.
Hi. Hello.
Hey, Jazz.
Hello, everybody. Thank
How
you
are
so
you?
much for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. I miss you. I haven't seen you in such a long time.
I know it's crazy right now, but thank you. It's crazy for everybody right now, and I love what you're doing. And that meditation was everything right now because I stretched And I felt
Okay.
it's true because we're not getting out of the house as much anymore. So we need to stretch. Like that's a big thing. Thank you for
Absolutely.
doing that.
Absolutely. So Jasmine, um, I know I introduced you and I kind of told people what you do, but real quick before we get into the question, just let people know about Home to My Soul and let people know about some of the amazing things you're doing because you're a Gemini, and as you always say, you don't do just one thing, and
It's true.
you do so much, but it's all related. It's all connected. And
Right.
so just let people know a little bit about what you've been doing and about Home to My Soul and what that company really stands for.
So I'm an artist, and that's how I met Heshima. Heshima is a musician, as you guys know. He's been playing, the keyboards and the piano and the guitar. He plays everything. So I'm a singer, and that's how I started. So I think as a kid, my dream was to be this big singer. But the reason why I wanted to do music was because I felt that as a media personality, whether you're a singer or an actress, you have a certain amount of influence and power when you're a celebrity. So as a kid, I think I probably knew I was a light worker. I just knew that I was that I had a mission, that it was about uplifting the vibration of the planet. And, I'm an old soul. I felt like I have been here before. I'm definitely someone who's reincarnated. I may look young, but I'm probably a million years old. Like, I don't know how many lifetimes I've had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
music was just one of my avenues of expression. But what I found as I got older was that what my purpose is communication. It's to speak. So one of the ways that I speak is through music, through vibration, through singing, through lyrics. Then I started writing more, and beyond writing songs, it was about writing a book, a self-help book, writing journaling and writing blogs and stuff like that. It's about getting my voice out there and giving a message to people to uplift their vibration. So the candle company, Home to My Soul, the reason why I put that together is because I feel that candles represents us, that we are the light. I'm a light worker. I think that all people, at the end of the day, we all come from the light. We're probably all light workers. I don't know if all of us are. I think there are evil spirits. That's a whole other subjects. But,
Yeah.
basically, our soul is supposed to be ignited like sparks and fires, like flame. So I feel that candles represent that soul that's within us, the light. And as being an artist, whenever I was writing songs, I liked to have candles lit and essential oils lit and sage burning. I had a certain ambiance that I needed in the studio to write songs. So I took that ambiance that I needed in the studio and I brought it to the home. And so basically, wherever it is, whether it's your home, whether you're a homebody or you're in the studio or you study or you have like an office space, but whatever space that you spend most of your time in, it's about creating that spiritual, clean, inspiring, creative space, because that's the space where you use the most time to create whatever you're creating or do whatever it is that you're doing. So hence, Home to My Soul is about creating this home that is for your specific soul so you can fulfill your mission in a beautiful, healthy, empowering way.
Yeah,
I said it in a nutshell.
I have to say this to the audience. So Jasmine and I, both being musicians, we've had a couple of occasions to try to do some work together. And the first time that I went to Jasmine's home, I walked into her space. She's in a new space now, but I walked into her space, and the walls were painted these beautiful colors, and the candles were all over the place. And of course, Jasmine and I both love Buddha statues. So there was this beautiful Buddha statue, and she had a turtle. I love turtles. And she had a turtle and her cats. And anybody who's ever spent any time in New York knows that we don't necessarily have the biggest apartments, right? But Jasmine was able to, in her space, create a space that, even though it wasn't physically huge, felt very expansive because of her knowledge of how to use color and how to use feng shui and organize things. And he walked in and sound was playing. She had 432 hertz music playing. Beautiful. The cats were laid out in front of the television set, right?
It's true. They're like Buddha cats.
They're like little Buddha cats. And so And if you can see Jasmine's space now here on the video, she's got plants around her. So the importance of the home environment, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you on, Jazz, in the time we're living in, some people live with roommates. Some people, you're fortunate enough to live alone. You're probably one of the few people in New York City that doesn't have a roommate, right? And some people live with their partner. Some people have full families in their homes. And we're hearing about, you know, some pretty troubling things, increases in domestic violence. I'm personally, because I love kids, I'm personally worried about young people who sometimes going to school is their safe haven. That's their outlet. And maybe they're not safe at home, right? And so there's lots of factors that we maybe never imagined we'd have to deal with. Just a couple of months ago, we never thought about this, right? And all of a sudden, people are confined. And even within apartment buildings where there's lots of neighbors. Me, I'm personally struggling with lots of noise because noise drives me.
I heard you say that a couple of times. Yeah.
I struggle with noise because I'm a quiet person, you know? So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, what do healthy boundaries look like? And how do people who might live in a space with some people that now 24 hours a day they're with, how can people set healthy boundaries if maybe they don't even know what that looks like? Maybe they've never even explored that topic. So just talk to me a little bit about boundaries. What do boundaries look like for you emotionally, physically, spiritually?
Well, I think first of all, there's different types of people. Some that are respectable, that are mature, and then there are people that are toxic and controlling and disrespectful. So when you're talking about setting boundaries, if you're speaking to a person who's mature or a person who's respectable, you can express what your boundaries are. And even if it gets a little uncomfortable, for the most part, you'll have a conversation and you can talk about setting those boundaries. But if
Right.
you're dealing with someone, for example, a narcissist, you know, someone who is like a, let's say on the verge of psychopath, and these things are real, right? If you're
Sure.
speaking to a person, if you live with a person like that, say your partner, let's say your mother, father, your brother, sister, your roommate, if you're dealing with a person that has that condition, regardless of what boundaries you try to set, those people are committed to overstepping your boundaries and not listening to you. So it's going to go in through one ear and out the other, and they're going to find a way to turn everything all around anyway.
Right.
So that's one thing. So I think, you know, wherever you were before the pandemic hit, whatever's happening now is just magnifying wherever you already were, you know?
Right.
So you're kind of, in a way, you're stuck where you're at because the universe is magnifying, okay, in a way, either you created this situation that you're in, or you attracted the situation you're in, or you subconsciously were victimized into the situation you're in. Because sometimes we meet people that are toxic. Like I said, a narcissist could manipulate you into moving into your home or getting you to move into them. So either way, something on a grand scale put you into the situation, because I don't believe in accidents. On a soul level, we have certain lessons that we need to learn.
Sure.
You know, so the pandemic is just magnifying it. So I think first of all, spiritually, we need to have that foundation intact first and know what is it that's healthy for me. What is my intuition feeling? What is my vibe? Is this good or is this bad for me? Because sometimes we compromise with people too, because we think that's the right thing to do. But you might be compromising and it's not the right thing to do. You're not supposed to compromise, right? So just now I'll give you an example. I live alone, right? And you said that I'm one of the fortunate people to live alone. But there's people I know personally who live alone that are having a hard time being alone, that wish they were quarantined with someone, that are, you know, now the alcoholism is coming out, or the depression is coming out, or the drug abuse is coming out because they live alone and they actually want to be with someone. So it's not that I'm fortunate that I live alone. It's more that I'm awakened and aware of certain things. So whether you live with someone or whether you live alone, it's about that individual, how they feel spiritually inside already. So like I said, this time is magnifying. I would say boundaries means that obviously you respect yourself and you want other people to respect you as well. But if someone is not respecting you, like I said, let's say they're a narcissist, let's say they're an alcoholic, let's say they're, off their meds right now, they're not getting medication, they're bipolar or whatever have you.
Sure.
Even though we can't go out right now to school or to work and this and that, if you're in a situation that is very toxic, you could still walk outside. Nobody is saying that you can't go for a walk by yourself. So when things get heated, let's say there is a fight, like domestic violence is at a high right now, arguments are at a high right now. People might say, hey, you shouldn't have to leave, you should fight back. That depends. With certain people, like I said, if you fight back, they're going to twist the whole thing around. They could beat you up. I mean, things can get, so every situation is different. So instead of stressing yourself out, go take a walk. Even if you have to take a walk for 5 hours and go to the park or go jogging, whatever, go quarantine with someone else. You could do that too. You can say, you know what? Find somebody else that you can quarantine with if you're in a really, really rough situation. If your situation is not that extreme, but it's still unhealthy, you can still stay over someone's house for the weekend. Stay at your cousin's house or a friend's house. Quarantine with them from Friday to Monday or whatever. No one's saying that you really can't leave your home at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think I'll give one more example before you ask me the next question. But something that I thought of earlier was like a volcano that's erupting. Right? If a volcano erupts, you have to move out of the way because when that lava comes down, you're gonna get burned. So you have to leave. So if you see something is erupting like that, don't stay there and try to be tough and fight back. Leave.
Right.
Just get out. And it might be a good thing because maybe the universe is pushing you out for a reason. And being pushed out doesn't always mean being weak. It can also mean being adaptable and mean that you're just not in the right place where you're supposed to be. That's why you're getting pushed out.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's important. I mean, I think so. The quote that I used at the beginning of the show said that boundaries help me to know where I end and someone else begins, and also knowing what I own and what I am supposed to take responsibility for gives me freedom. So the idea, for me of boundaries is that boundaries allows people to begin to be accountable for their behavior and knowing ahead of time. See, I think a lot of people don't really normally set boundaries. We kind of come up, we've all grown up in a society where you get in a relationship and the relationship is all about, well, yeah, no matter what, we live with these romantic notions. No matter what, I'm going to be there and I'm going to give myself completely to my partner and yada, yada, yada. And that stuff sounds really great in novelas and soap operas, but it's not the reality of a healthy relationship. And so I don't think people set boundaries from the beginning and say, listen, I'm this type of person. A few hours a day, I need to be by myself, which means that if we're now quarantined in a space, you talked about going for a walk or going somewhere that allows you that space. Let's imagine, that there's a couple and maybe one or two children in the house. One of the things that I've been talking to people about is the importance of saying, we're going to sit down as a family. We're going to establish that this is person number one's private sanctuary space.
Mm-hmm.
This space is person number two's private sanctuary space, etc. And everybody has to respect the fact that when so-and-so says, I'm going to my sanctuary space or whatever they call it, that this is not to be messed with, right? You're to be left alone in that space. Now, what are the consequences of violating those boundaries? Because then, you have people who are real old school. If I had said to my father, I'm going into my private space, please don't violate, my father would have looked at me and said, I pay for that space. What are you
Right.
talking about? You're going into that private space.
Right.
This is my house, right? So you're going to have those people that think like that. So then it might mean, some people, like if you live in Queens or if you live in the upper part of the Bronx, you might live in a house where there's a little small backyard. At least being able to go into the backyard and breathe some fresh air, right?
Right.
So I think that it's important, but it's also really important to understand that the freedom of boundaries, the responsibility of setting up boundaries also gives us some freedom in and of itself, because we're advocating for ourselves, which is an important skill regardless of when or where you're living, right? So the next thing, Jazz, that I'd love for you to touch on is, as a woman and as a Latina who grew up with, certain types of expectations. We know what that is as Latinos. We kind of know culturally sometimes what those expectations are. How have you learned as a woman, both professionally, because you work in an industry, well, you work in many industries, but in the music industry, you had to deal with the issue of boundaries, with people feeling like they could be all up in your space. As a businesswoman, you have to deal with boundaries. Just as a human, as a woman in everyday life and dealing with people, you have to deal with boundaries. And even in some of the other professional spaces, learning boundaries. How have you learned how to set appropriate boundaries in a respectful way that respects both you and the person you're talking to about those boundaries?
Great question. I think that it's different for everyone, right? Because what I want to talk about is, even though the question is about boundaries, everyone has a different nature. Meaning, and I'll give the example of like a shark in the ocean versus a bird flying in the air, right? Those are two different environments. Like a bird cannot go into the ocean. A shark is not going to fly in the sky. So the way that I set boundaries is going to be different from the way someone else sets boundaries. Like someone just might be a little bit more snappier and more, blunt and more whatever about it. I might come across a little bit softer about it. And it doesn't mean that my boundaries aren't as real and as respectable and true, but maybe my personality isn't that bold. I'm not like, snapping about it or whatever. And certain people will respect a person who has an attitude like that, thinking that, oh, those boundaries, I'm not going to mess with that person. And, someone else might think because maybe I come across saying it softer that I'm weaker and they can overstep my boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But then there's some people who think the person with the attitude doesn't really have boundaries, but they're just being a real bitch or a real jackass or an asshole or whatever, right? So they would rather speak to someone who's softer and they would respect my boundaries more than they would the person with the attitude. They'll be like, oh, that person, whatever. So everyone's nature is different from how they express their boundaries, when that comes out, if they say it from the beginning or if they say it, a day or two later or whatever. It's different for everybody, right? So for me, like being a woman, what I've learned getting older is that, first of all, when I was younger, I was more of an open book. And that's just my personality because I'm a free spirit. So I like to think, love and light. And, like if you were living in Nirvana or heaven, right? There's no need to really have boundaries in a place like that because no one has ill intention. No one's deceitful. No one's looking to, whatever. So you can be an open book. So it's natural to be that way. But in the world that we live in, because there are people who are deceitful or, have bad intentions, whatever, you have to have these boundaries up because you don't know what people's intentions are. So you have to kind of like put that wall up and then get to know people and see if you can trust them. And it's a sad way to live, because you should be able to just be an open book and just be openly loved. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. So as I've gotten older, what has worked for me is, for example, like with men, for example, I don't care if I think they're a great guy or whatever. I don't care. If my process is that I want to be patient and take time getting to know the person, and they want to walk off because they think I'm taking too long, oh well. But that's because I've learned to love myself enough to say, hey, this is what works for me because of what I've been through. I just can't be that spontaneous open book the way I was when I was younger. Even if it was fun and even if it was confident and sparkly and all these things, I still have a spark. I still have that spontaneous side to me, but just not as quick, not as naive. I'm more reserved. I'm more, like, you have my phone number, we'll talk. I don't need to meet you right away. Like, this is like, for example, like if it was a dating app or something like that. Like, I'm going to take my time getting to know the person, whether it's for romantic interest or friendship interest or business interest. My process is my process because it's what's working for me. Right. And so I can't be concerned with whether I lose people along the way if it doesn't work for them. Because as you said about boundaries, it's where you meet yourself and where the other person meets themselves or something like that, right?
Yeah, where I end and another person begins.
Right, where I end and another person begins, right?
Yep.
That's right. Okay, so it's like that. When you learn to embrace and really love yourself wherever you are in the journey, you're not so concerned with compromising how you go about things just to please someone else or to win someone's favor or to keep them around.
Yeah. There's this other really great quote that I came up with as I was researching and looking at the idea of boundaries. It says, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others.
There you go. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, the idea, our society is kind of based on the idea of pleasing people. So we misunderstand that being kind to people doesn't mean being a doormat.
Right.
Setting boundaries doesn't mean being mean and rude, but it's really about us. It's really about what makes us feel safe, what makes us feel whole, whether it's in our job situation. As you know, our line of work, the entertainment industry, can be full of people who like to kind of push the envelope and see just how far they can get in order to either manipulate us professionally or manipulate us personally. And I, just like you, in my younger years starting out, because I was so much invested in the idea of, I was hungry and I wanted to please people because I thought that that's how I was going to get ahead, until I realized that, wow, in my thirstiness, somebody kept giving me something to drink, proverbially speaking, in order to make me feel comfortable enough to let my boundaries down. So it was a form of manipulation, and it took a long time to learn to love myself enough to say it's okay to disappoint someone else if it means preserving my dignity, my wholeness, or advancing my healing process. So I think that the idea, and because I also acknowledge that for men and women, this issue of boundaries can be a very different discussion.
Right.
As a man, and particularly as a 6 foot tall, stocky dude, I don't have to worry too much about physical boundaries most of the time. Even though I'm like a teddy bear, most people just look at my physical stature and they're not going to really go there with me, right?
Right.
But with a woman in our society, that still kind of really pushes that idea of one gender being stronger than the other, etc., etc. You know, we have to understand, and of course, I have a lot of nieces and a lot of goddaughters, and I'm constantly telling them, you're never obligated to be in a situation or be anywhere where you feel physically, emotionally, or spiritually disrespected.
See, but the thing is, I'm glad that you said it's different for men and women, because it is. First of all, most people want a companion eventually, even if they're going to be single for 5 or 10 years, whatever. At the end, we think when we're an old man or old woman, I do want to have a companion, right? So men don't really have that fear as much, and I think it's because growing up, there's more women than men. I mean, it's just like that, in life. So I think a lot of women are afraid to be alone, because there's so many women. There's always going to be some other woman who's going to say, well, if you don't want your man, I'll take him. Like, we know that guy, even if he's an asshole, he'll end up with someone, and he'll probably end up with an amazing woman who's smart and beautiful and strong and independent. Like, he'll still get a good catch. It's weird, but he still will. And I've seen men go through divorces, right? And then in their later years, when they're older, still end up with a good woman who's like maybe 10, 15 years younger than him, 20 years younger than him even. And he'll just say, I learned from my first marriage or my second marriage or whatever, or my, and now I'm a better man. Where women, when we're in our 50s and 60s, it's a little harder to find somebody at that age. If you're alone, you're alone. So a lot of women tend to settle once they reach certain ages. They'll be like, they're not as picky as when they're in their 20s. When a woman is in their 30s and then their 40s, they'll start settling, because they'll be like, well, if I don't settle, I'll be alone when I'm in my 50s. Right? And 60s. So women have that fear. So, society really is we even with the music industry and business and just the way we go about things, it's crumbling for a reason, because there's so many different issues in society that are just wrong. So kids, are raised by parents and grandparents and teachers and all these adults that are still passing on what they learned to get along in the world. They're teaching them how to get along, and we're just passing down the junk. So you really got to get to a place spiritually, man or woman, where you're like, I love myself and I love this life, and just let the fear just go away. And trust that, first of all, your life is temporary. We're not meant to be here forever. It's temporary. So what you do with your time, just follow your intuition and your purpose. And it's such an abundant universe and planet that when one door closes, another one will open. So if you have to let that go, regardless of what age you're in or what's going on in your life, let the fear go and allow something else to come in. But it's easier said than done, and I know this. I know this because I know this. I've been through my share of shit.
Jasmine and I have known each other for quite a while, and so we're really good friends, and so we've shared a lot of our life with each other, and we've been the go-tos. We've talked to each other late night telephone calls. What do I do with this situation? So, but I think that that's a perfect way to kind of end the segment, Jasmine, is the idea of not being afraid to let go of something that doesn't
serve you,
resonate with us as true. It doesn't serve us. And certainly letting go of things that seem to disrespect the boundaries that we've established for our own selves and the way that we choose to live our lives. So I want to thank you for coming on. I kept you a lot longer than I told you I was going to keep you for. But before you go, please just let people know how they can find you online. If you have one of your candles, you usually do, hold it up. Let people see these amazing jasmine. Yeah, is that the jasmine one? The jasmine scent?
Yeah, I have a couple of them, but this is one of them. This is the wood burning flame. So I have the Echo Wick.
The candles are amazing. And they last a long time. They're not they're not like the cheapy candles that burn out after a couple of times. They last She gave me a candle 2 years ago, I think, for like Christmas or something. And that thing lasted a good 3 months, and I burned candles for a long time every day. So where can people find you online? How can people support your ventures?
Sure. Well, my website is home2mysoul.com. So you can find that on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, but definitely check out the website. It's www.home2mysoul.com. And you can follow my personal Instagram as well, which has my music, my motivational speaking, my candles, a mixture of everything basically. My personal Instagram is Jasmine Clemente. I recently just did yoga teacher training for restorative yin yoga. The
Yep.
pandemic happened and it kind of threw me for a loop. So
Sure.
but that I do eventually I will be teaching yoga classes when this kind of calms down. But I'm also in the midst of finishing my first self-help book, which is called In the Lights. Living in the Light, I'm sorry. And it comes with a candle and a book. So it's a self-help book for you to live in the light. And so it'll be on home2mysoul.com. Follow me, Jasmine Clemente, and at Home to My Soul. Either one of those Instagram accounts, they're both. One is Jasmine, the other one is my candle company.
And respect boundaries with Jasmine, because she's one of my favorite people on the planet, and you'll have to deal with me if you disrespect the boundaries.
Thank you. He's a Taurus, so that bull.
That's right. That's right. That's my friend, man. So, all right. Well, Jazz, thank you so much. I love you. And I'm actually gonna call you later so we can debrief. And
love you too.
Thank you so much for tuning in with Jasmine and I. And follow her. I'm sure that what we'll do is we'll post the links in the show video or on the site as well, so you can go back and double check if you didn't get a chance to grab that. Thanks so much, Jasmine.
Awesome.
I'll
Bye,
talk to you later. All right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And I know that we went for quite a while talking, but I think that this is such an important topic. So as I get ready to close the show out this week, I want to thank, as always, everybody at Studio 2622 for supporting the SoulJourn, amazing executive producers of the show. And please, if you would like to forward questions for myself or Jasmine, please add them right into the comment sections of any of the social media platforms that you might be watching on. And go to Facebook at 2622. If you would like to become a fiscal sponsor for the show, an underwriter for the show, because we would certainly appreciate your support. So I'm going to do one last piece of music tonight. This piece is very, very important to me, and I think it's important now. The great Donny Hathaway redid a song, or made it pretty famous, by Fred Coots and Sam Lewis. It's called For All We Know. And the words say, for all we know, we may never meet again. But before we go, make this moment sweet again. So as I leave you with this song, I want to encourage you, because tomorrow is not promised, because we don't know from moment to moment where we may be taken by life to different physical spaces. We may fall out of contact with people, but it's really important. So when you sign off today, I want to kind of task you with something, which is to tell somebody that you haven't told in a long time. You may think that they know, but tell them that you love them. And then look in the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself. I want to dedicate this to all of the people who I've personally lost throughout the COVID pandemic. For all we know. Thank you so much. For all we know. before you go, make this moment sweet again. We won't say goodnight until the last minute, and I'll hold out my hand, and my heart will be in it for all we know. This may only be a dream, so love me tonight. Tomorrow was made for some, but tomorrow may never come. For all we know, for all we know, for all we know. See you next week on the SoulJourn at Studio 2622. Have a great night.
My mic was muted. I am excellent at technology. So, if you're still watching, I appreciate your patience. Welcome to Studio 2622. You're seeing some of the insides right here. And I will tell you that everything I am wearing right now, what you see behind me and all around me, was specifically chosen to tease out a new show coming in the next 2 weeks. More information will follow. Let's give a big shout out to supporter Marissa Capicelli of Wordtree LLC, who is always a fanatic supporter of Studio 2622 and who made some wonderful comments tonight. Now, if you would like to support content like the SoulJourn, if you would like to support what Studio 2622 does, if you would like to get into the fight to keep arts and culture and everything that we do here alive during the COVID-19 crisis, we'll head right on over to patreon.com/2622 for all of the information you will need, plus some behind the scenes footage, early announcements, and much, much more. Thank you so much for watching the SoulJourn tonight, and I hope to see you next Thursday. Have a great evening.